Ladies and gentlemen, CEFPI President Merle Kirkley.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the new CEFPI Annual 85th Conference and Exposition. I'm Merle Kirkley, and I am delighted to open this conference. We're going to experience these 3 days a new way, a new face, and a new day. This year, CEFPI has stretched its vision, and so have you, the members. We've climbed to new heights and grown as an association. Today, we truly are a global, international organization attuned to the needs of those in the fields of educating, planning, designing, and constructing places where our children learn. We've established a global outreach committee this year, which our own Chuck Newman is looking at ways that we can help third world and developing nations. I'm really proud to have led CEFPI efforts in expanding our reach around the globe. You know, we entered into the political arena for the first time, where we went and helped obtain funding for schools that is much needed, that will create the top-of-the-line educational opportunities for our members and, most of all, our children. Expanding our area of influence by strengthening our partnerships with organizations such as NSPMA, ASBO, and NSPMA. Besides, we have extended our influence into Europe and are about to open chapters in India and beyond in the world. We've launched a new, exciting educational opportunities for you, our members. We now have an advanced certificate program at San Diego State University that I hope all of you will be able to take part in at some point in time. As you were getting settled, you saw really some amazing photos from around the world of our friends and our colleagues, including a really nice photo of President Clinton where we received an honor by being the planning organization by the Clinton Climate Foundation. It's really been a tremendous year. You know, but I will tell you, it's a tremendous year for CEFPI. And by the way, it is not over yet. By a long shot, it's not over yet. We have 3 very exciting and intense days. You're going to learn, you're going to network, and most of all, you're going to have noise. And that we have fun planned for you. Oh, I'm thrilled. I honestly, I'm thrilled, honored, and humbled to be here today as your president. Before we move into what's in store for you for the next 3 days, I'd like to introduce you to the group that without them and their help and you as chapters and regions, we wouldn't be anywhere. I'd like to introduce your 2008 Board of Directors. Sue Robertson, President-elect. Roy Sprague, past President. Judy Hoskins. Robert Sand. Kathy Christie. Wayne Roberts. Al Senna. Jeff Phillips. David Anstrand. David Edwards. Mark Wernicke. And Irene Negaglione. Let's hear it for your 2008 Board of Directors. Thank you. You know, I'm really privileged to serve with such a fine group of individuals and professionals as they are. And now I would like to introduce to you, I can't say new anymore because he's been on the job for 9 months, our Executive Director, John Ramsey. I also couldn't let this moment go by. I will tell you, we have an incredible staff. I hope all of you agree with that. They are the ones that keep our association going on a day-to-day basis. I'd like to really thank our staff for all the work that they have done. Let's give them a round of applause. And a good one again. Come on, let's hear it for them. Our staff. You know, finally, before we get started, and I get too carried away, which is pretty easy for me, for those of you who know me, I'd like to recognize the Washington chapter and the Pacific Northwest region for, through these years, I wouldn't be here. I just want to thank you. Most of all, I want to recognize the person that makes it possible for me to be here today. In fact, she's the strength behind most everything I do in my life. And without her, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I'd like to ask my partner, my beautiful wife of almost 47 years, Joanne, to stand, please. I have several other members who came today. They wanted to be here. I'm not quite sure why, but my kids wanted to be here. So I have my daughter Kristen is here. My daughter Mary Frances is here. Oh, and the in-laws came from Philadelphia. She's almost a member. Oh, I almost forgot. It's about kids that we are, isn't it? We do this for kids, and we all have an inspiration. And one of my inspirations is sitting in the audience today, my granddaughter Hannah. Hello? Hey, John, excuse me, John, but I'm kind of busy up here if you don't mind. Oh, okay, I mean, can we just wait till we're done? Oh, that's what you wanted to know. Oh, did I ask everybody to keep their personal communication devices turned off during all of the presentations this week? Hey, John, what's a personal communication device? Oh, yeah, cell phones, pagers, Blackberries. Oh, and I know, John, you mean iPhones. You're such a Mac snob. Oh, okay, so I'll tell him. All right, John, see you later. Goodbye. Although Stephen wants them on. As I said before, we have a great time in store for you, and you may have already noticed just a few of the things that we've done. We really are trying to change as an organization. When we embarked on this year, you know, we knew there would be some big changes. And I have to tell you, you talked, and we listened to you. We entered this year without an executive director. And we were simply an organization that I heard from you many times that we were just status quo. We decided to make some changes, not only for the betterment of CFPI as an association, but most of all for you as our members, because that's really what it's about, is members. If there's anything John tells me every day, it's a members organization. Any day now, and I mean any day, in the next day or two, you will see a new world-class CEFPI website. Make sure you partake in it. Sure, what do you think of the facelift we've given the conference? We've given it a much-needed facelift. But that's only one area we've implemented change in the past year. Here's one example of the progress over the year. Yesterday we had over 50 national leaders involved in building healthy, high-performing schools attended our first Healthy Schools Summit. You know, as they sat there through the day, which was jointly organized by the EPA and CFPI, it was a huge, huge success. You know, the groups of experts were representing really diverse areas. I mean, really diverse areas. They fostered themselves in dialogue, and they really set the tone to build healthy, high-performing schools. I want to thank Michelle Carreri of the EPA Tools for Schools manager for, quite honestly, her tireless efforts with CEFPI and putting this forward. We've established a number of relationships and rekindled some really with the EPA, the PTA, AASA, NSPMA, just to name a few. I'd like to acknowledge in attendance today is the incoming president of the Parent Teachers Association, Mr. Chuck Saylor. Chuck, I know you're in here somewhere. Thank you for, there he is over here. Thank you for being here. Really excited to build a coalition with us. And we also have today, as part of the AASA arm, is the director of Dr. Mac Armstrong. Mac, where are you at? He's here somewhere. Thank you for being here. You know, we launched a lot of new communication tools to our members and our partners through a network of blogs and e-groups and other. Okay, how many of you been on an e-group? How many of you signed up? Well, we only have about 45, 65, 70% to go. You need to get old that you forget that we have the new. You need to get on and answer our blogs, get part of an e-group. You know, yesterday we also hosted the state facilities, school facilities directors throughout the United States, and it was wonderful. You know, us to be prudent. You want us in how we conduct business. You want to make sure that we spend your money. And we've made some wholesale changes that really ensure us internationally well into the future. We have new professional development programs and services that were developed, including in a hard course, I understand, recognition in collaboration with San Diego State University's National Center for the 21st Century Schoolhouse. It has got 17 members, and I'll tell you, it's a great course. And finally, we've restructured our staff. We've put new technological infrastructure office in Washington, D.C., so that we could really better work for you, our association, our members. I'm really proud of the accomplishments we have done this year. But we're not done yet. In the coming months, you're going to hear about our strategic plan, which we met in Dallas about 2 months ago. And you're going to see a lot of new introductions of new initiatives, new communication tools. It's going to be a phenomenal year of change. You know, during the past year, I've been so blessed to have had the opportunity to travel around the world. And I've met members from the United States and all over the world, met all of our regions and chapters that I was able to visit. And you know what? During those visits, I have seen children from Singapore to Africa, Australia, England, and many more. But you know what I've seen more than anything else? I've seen children engaged in learning. And even more than that, I've seen their passion for wanting education, something that we provide by the buildings that we build. We continue to listen to you with the bold goal of building this great association, not only to meet, but to exceed anything you ever thought of, as evidenced by this new and stimulating format. For those, we turned that up just so everybody could hear. You've heard loud and clear. You talked, we listened. You wanted a relevant educational conference, and you have a relevant educational conference for 3 days. That is intended to deliver over the next 3 days. Our work doesn't stop in San Diego, friends. We want to take this momentum of change and transcend it into the associate every day for you as our members. You know, to that end, we really do need your help. There's a great audience here tonight. And I hope you don't mind me taking a minute to tell you what CEFPI means to me as a member of this great association, as a professional and an individual. Many years ago, a former international president, Steve Young, asked me to help him with a conference. And I have to tell you, I was hooked. I was hooked. I saw it as an organization that gives kids better places to learn. You know, really, through my involvement, I found CEFPI to be all of that and much more. It truly, over almost the last 20 years, has changed my life. But most importantly, I've witnessed not only what the kids learn, where they learn, the continual improvement of those learning environments for kids. And that, my friends, I hope is why each one of you are here today. The reason I tell you this, that CEFPI is nothing without you. I want to encourage you as members to get involved. Get involved with all of our professional development. But I'm asking you to make CEFPI a part of your job, and I know you have loaded with everything that you do. But not just as an extra activity that you do maybe when you make time, you have the time to go get a good dinner. We need your participation, every one of you, to keep this organization moving forward and doing great things for kids. Go out and get involved. Get involved in your local chapter. Get involved in your region. Get involved in your community. And we hope that maybe you can even get involved in the international CEFPI. That's enough of my soapbox for this morning. It is just a great pleasure for me to introduce our keynote speaker, a man that we met last year in Singapore, and quite frankly, I was captivated by him and his message. He will not only deliver today's message, which I think is just going to be phenomenal, but he's with us for 3 days on our journey of learning over the next until Friday morning. So thank you. And we can't forget the sponsors for Stephen. It always takes somebody to sponsor. And so I would like to thank the sponsors for this morning's session, which are the Mondo Corporation. If you watched the Beijing Olympics, you got to see 5 gold records set on their track. The Tandis Corporation, and a little company that I work for, the Charles Beresford Company. So let's give our sponsors a round of applause, please. You know, Stephen is rated as Europe's top education expert, one of the most influential academics in technology in the world, and he's just a phenomenal professor. He is the guiding father of a number of social networking projects, including the UltraLab, which is Europe's leading research institute. Currently, Guru Heppell is the CEO of Heppell.net, a policy and learning consultancy. Would you please rise and help me welcome Professor Stephen Heppell.
Gosh, well, good afternoon. It says here. What an extraordinary time. I'm just so pleased to be here because in amongst all of you is a little chance to change the world a bit. And honestly, it doesn't come along very often, does it? So we're going to chat a little today. I'm going to talk to you a bit about 21st century learning, why we're not in the 20th century anymore, that's for sure. And we're going to have some great conversations between now and me getting back on the plane. And I think we're in a world where those conversations matter. Somebody wisely said to me just the other day, a student actually, he said, you know, the thing about this university is, he was talking about a university I was in at that time, he said, it's none of the committees work. He said, all they do is process stuff. He said, all the progress comes out of conversations. And so here we are, 3 days of conversations. 21st century, it's not about building big things for people, is it? It's about helping people to help each other. And what better opportunity than all of us together right now. So that's what we're going to do, really. I've come here via Perth, curiously enough. I was in Australia. And I was slightly alarmed. The first time I went to Perth is in 1988. Clearly, I was only 5, you know. Something like that, you know. And they introduced me by saying they were going to put up some of the things I said then. I was nervous as a kitten. I thought, oh, gosh, I wonder what I said. But actually, I was quite pleased, really, that I'd really focused on learning, leaping from that early stage where we just used technology to do what we used to do, a bit quicker, or a bit cheaper, and how we'd move eventually to a final stage when we really did get a chance to rethink all the things we were doing in learning. And I stand by that right now, I think. Then even more scarily, they said, well, you were back in 95, Stephen, you said some more stuff. I thought, oh, no. But actually what I said then was that, you know, there were chances for social networking, for people to collaborate and join up, and those chances are going to be coming at us thick and fast in the next decade. And those opportunities would bring a huge change in the climate of expectation in our young learners. And really, that's pretty much the focus of where we're going to be today. I just want to think about what that radical new learning might look like and reflect on how our new learners have got a whole new set of expectations about what we might be able to do. So where to go? Well, on the way here, I came through Dubai, which is an interesting place, really. And I was sitting looking at the moving pavement, you know, those walkways. And I thought, oh, what a good metaphor that would be for all this. Because as you sit and look at it, you see people who've just got on board and they're walking along in a relaxed sort of way and making great progress. But if you look a bit harder, of course, you see people who've just got on, and you've been there, haven't you? They just get on and stand still, you know. Oh, no, you know. And everybody's kind of damming up behind them, and they, oh, we're making great progress, the wall's going past, it's all fine, you know. And you get a few people who they just got there early and they think, oh, I don't know what's happening here. I'm going to sit here. They all miss their planes, of course. You know. And a few really tired who just don't trust that technology in front of them. They can keep as far away from it as possible. They're walking, you know, with their bags from gate to gate. They say, oh, I can't believe, you know, I've got to get to the gate in 10 minutes. It's taken me 15. They're exhausted by trying to keep up without the opportunities in front of them. And I thought, well, that's not a bad metaphor for all this, really. Because sure, around the world, some people have leapt on the opportunity of 21st century learning, and they're just cruising along with their ambition comfortably intact, and others are mistaking progress for the little bit of change, that little bit of criterion referencing, that little bit of productivity gain. You know, oh, look, the children are doing 2% better this year, that's jolly good. And they're just standing still, aren't they? And a few others have just stood back. So for me, that just made a nice little analogy, really. And this is another one. I was talking to a group of children 6 months ago about literacy, as you do. And I said to them, oh, look, golly gosh, if your teachers were literate, what would they be able to do? And they said this. It's nice, isn't it, that they were expecting them to make a contribution. They didn't want their teachers to be cyber couch potatoes, you know, wanted them to be making a contribution, offering comments. And they also said this. And again, that sense of contribution was important. And they said this. And this was really because they were just worried about their teachers, you know. Going to send all their money to Nigeria, I can't believe it, you know. It's not true. And they said this, and they spent a bit of time explaining that you subscribe, but it doesn't really cost you money. It's free. It's all free out there, you know. And then they laughed a lot when they said this. I thought this was very funny indeed. I thought this was terrific. I thought the fact that their teachers wouldn't be able to do that was the funniest thing on the planet. And they also laughed a bit at the thought that their teachers wouldn't be able to spell Flickr. If I'd have asked them this month, I'd have got another set of answers, wouldn't I? And they'd have maybe worrying about how much time we spent in Twitter, or been thinking a little bit more about how you manage a community in Facebook, or whatever. You know. And schools are, on the one hand, wrestling with how on earth are we going to build the professional development that allows us to do all this stuff. And, you know, over the road, schools are saying, excuse me, to the children, would you mind helping us with our professional development, the stuff that you know that we don't know? And wouldn't it be great if you ran a couple of PD days for us? I've just literally 2 weeks ago come out of a school where exactly that was happening. And it was absolutely electrifying. Children had raised their game massively, of course, but what they got, what you get throughout this is going to be a theme of what I say to you this morning, is when you talk to children about the quality of their learning and your teaching, you get that meta-level reflection. They start thinking about their learning. And that meta-level reflection is a propellant in terms of their learning. The minute they think about their learning and the quality of their learning and how it could be better, it gets better, significantly so. So crucially, when we're building schools and facilities, we've got to build schools and facilities that ask questions. They don't provide all the answers. They've got to be agile spaces that allow people to choose and choose and choose again how learning is going to be configured for this week, for this month, for this year. There's a lot of rhetoric about including the learner voice in the design of our institutions. But you wouldn't want to be in a school that was designed by your big brother 5 years before. You want to have an input now, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. So building our schools that are agile and that can not just listen to, but respond to the views of our students is absolutely crucial. And I'll tell you what, that's a very different design challenge from the one that we had all those years ago in the last century. And look, we're nearly through the first decade of the 21st century already. Next year will be 2009. The noughties have nearly gone. Extraordinary, really. Well, I thought maybe to just reflect a little on the scale of all this too. And there was a nice moment for me. I was watching the Olympics closing ceremony, and here's David Beckham, well-known Los Angeles football player. What can I say? Soccer, you say soccer, don't you? To remember. It's football. You'll learn. What I loved about this image, when I started looking at it, this was London trying to say, well, gosh, we're going to be running the Olympics soon, and it's going to be quite exciting too. We did this by driving a bus on, and it collapsed, you know. It's a dramatic moment. And David kicked a ball. And I looked at the background, and I suddenly realized that every single person in the background was carrying a camera and using it. First of all, I saw the silver ones. Then I looked harder and saw the black and gray ones. Everybody was taking a photograph. And I thought, jeepers, I wonder where those have all gone. And of course, I went off to Flickr, and there was, you know, on Flickr, row after row after row of photographs contributed by all the people who've been sitting in the crowd. You know, you never go to Flickr other than you see about 3,000 or 4,000 photographs contributed in the previous minute, 24/7. The magnitude of this is pretty extraordinary and pretty exciting. If we go to YouTube, can you read that from the back? Oh, I hate being read to from slides, but I'll zoom it up a bit maybe. But the key figure here is that every minute, 10 hours of video contributed to YouTube. Huge amounts of stuff. The magnitude of this is just vast. And that magnitude plays out in all sorts of unexpected ways. I have a project in China, which I'll tell you a bit about. I'm not expecting that you can read this. I'll zoom it in a minute. But this is a project where we're connecting up Sun Media, their big TV channel, with a publisher, teenage kids magazine publisher with an online community. It's a fabulous project. And because I'm, you know, a bit cautious about all this, I said, well, this is all good, chaps, but we must have a pilot. Whatever else we do, we better have a pilot until we worked out how it's all going to work. So this is the pilot. It's just started. And I don't know if you can just about see the number in the middle there, but the pilot is for 20 million children. And if it goes well, we're going to roll it out, you know. It's going to help. Just wanted to give you a sense in this little bit that this is big. This genuinely is big. But for me, there's nothing bigger than the challenge that faces us from this simple figure. In the next 34, if you add up all the children who've ever left school in history, ever, from the pharaohs, more children will leave school in the next 30 years than have ever left school before, total. Now that tells us we can't keep doing it the same way. The average weighted pupil unit, the amount of money we've got per head to educate a child in, in England is, I guess it's around about $8,000 per head per year. In Afghanistan, it's $60. Talking to the education minister in Kurdistan, the not quite so dangerous end of Iraq, and I said to her, because she was talking about the design of schools, I said, what's the most important thing in the design of your schools? And she came straight back and she said, the most important thing is from the air, they mustn't look like military installations. Sort of daunting, really. She wasn't kidding. So we're in a world where we can't just keep doing it the old way, that old factory model of learning, where we just did things because they were convenient and they suited, or we threw resources at it because we had the resources to throw. That is gone. We've got to critically assess everything we do. Why would we possibly have 1,000 children in a secondary school and ring a bell and expect 1,000 teenagers to be simultaneously hungry? Most extraordinary behavior. Why would we put 25 children in a room because they're born between 2 Septembers? I'll tell you what, you won't find one line of educational theory that says that's worth doing. It's just convenient. It's just handy for us. And we've got to look at every single aspect of what we do, every single aspect, and think about how we might do it better, how we might be more ambitious. And make no mistake, we're in a battle for children's attention. The most valuable thing in the 21st century is attention. If you've got a video that a lot of people watch, if you've got an advert, you've got a television program, if you capture attention with a fashion, with a moment of celebrity, you can become famous now simply by capturing people's attention. It equals celebrity. Attention is the one thing that's scarce. Content isn't king, we're awash with content. 10 hours of video every minute, loads of stuff. But attention is the thing that's scarce. And building schools that capture the attention of our learners and hold it is absolutely crucial. You know, some of that's going to be about these devices. I had a wry smile when he said about turning them off. This is just like Cinderella. You know, every time you say you don't believe in phones, somewhere a child's engagement dies, doesn't it? You know? Every turned off device is a turned off child. You know the mantra. So somehow in all this, we've got to reach out for every opportunity, every chance. Look, some of this stuff, let's just take a moment. One of my favorite little moments from YouTube. Let's take a moment to have a look at some of the stuff that's on there. This was rather nice. This was posted there by a couple of excluded children. I run a charity for excluded children. I got 1,000 children being kicked out of school, who incidentally are exceeding the targets for the schools they've been thrown out of. This is how to multiply by drawing lines. It's pretty simple. 21, you do 2 lines and 1 line. And then for the 13, you do 1 line and then 3 lines. And then we're going to add up the intersections on the vertical columns, if you see what I mean. So there's on that side, look, 1, 2, 3. Hannah, this will get you out of trouble with your maths. Just make a note, it's good. And over here, there's 2 intersections, and in the middle, then there's 6 above, and look, 1 more down below. That's 7. I guess you're way ahead of me. You've done the maths already. 273 is the answer. And there it is. You know, you just go to YouTube, search for mental arithmetic. You will find shed loads of this stuff. Absolutely shed loads of. Nice challenge, by the way, for a child is, okay, there it is. How does it work? This has been published by a family in Japan, by the way. So, family in Japan publish it. A couple of excluded children tell me about it. You see what an extraordinary joined-up world this is. I'm not going to keep running that because you'll be focused on it all day. It's going to be. There'll be questions at the end. You know, I'll be asking you how it worked. You know. Now, this is not a revolution. We knew most of this stuff already. We just sort of didn't choose to listen to it back in the. Well, look, here's a really early project I was engaged in back in the early 90s. And let me just play you the conclusions from the first phase of it. And they're pretty familiar, I think.
And initial evaluation of this first phase of the Millennium Project has produced some very interesting results.
There were terrific outcomes in terms of, well, comparative esteem, I think is the best way to describe it. We had 8-year-old children talking to PhD-level scientists, where the 8-year-old knew more about badgers than the scientist. So in the debate about badgers, it was the 8-year-old that was leading the research and leading the debate. Clearly, when they were talking about thermodynamics, it was the scientists and engineers that knew more. And they grew to respect each other's perspective in a way that I think none of us expected. It became a learning community rather than a learning conflict. And instead of pumping information to the kids were part of the tapestry that was making learning happen.
You could see how long ago that was by how young I looked. You know? It was a very long time ago. But we knew then that collegiality and mutuality were absolutely at the heart of all this. Learning together, learning from and with, were central to our understanding. I'd spent a little bit of time working with museums, and one of the things the museums were confused by was, what was their role? You know, was it a place where you just put objects, or was it a place where you captured stories? And as part of the fun, we built this little taxi, London cab, and had it driving all over England with a film studio in the back. We'd drive into people's villages and we'd say, if you've got interesting objects with interesting stories, bring them out. And they'd put them on a turntable, the object would twirl around, and it was, gosh, the things people brought out, their ration books from the war, their first record they bought, fashionable clothes, I mean, all sorts of things. Quite extraordinary. And the museum suddenly realized that their role really wasn't to own everything, but it was to enable that conversation, to enable that discourse, that narrative, those multiple threads of wisdom, and to lift the quality of that a fair bit. We'd drive this thing into villages. We had people queuing, literally queuing around the block to tell their stories and to show their objects. It's a world of mutuality and of sharing, and that was, gosh, a long time ago. We, just the other day, I was challenged by the Dublin government in Ireland. they said, Stephen, they said, we're a bit worried that we're a bit worried that we haven't got enough engineers or programmers, and we want something done about it. So I said, oh, I don't know, what am I going to do? You know? And what I said, let's do, we built a festival of light in Dublin. For a week, the whole of Dublin was lit up. This is just one of the exhibits. For a week, the whole of Dublin was lit up by people who'd programmed light projectors of one sort or another and built installations. This is some kids playing with the architectural features of the building over the road. As you can see, they're just playing Pong on the windows and doors. Can you see that? Heaps of fun. Major road hazard, we get crashes in the road, all that stuff. The whole week, people just smacking into each other, you know. But it was fun enough, you know. And the whole of Dublin was lit up with this stuff. Just extraordinary. All U2's entire light warehouse of stuff was all booked out within 2 weeks of us announcing. Communities all over Dublin competing with each other with their programming and their engineering. And suddenly, of course, the government realized that the place was awash with engineers and programmers. They just needed to know that it was cool. And it was a nice project. And perhaps best of all, when we took a community of head teachers, I got challenged to see if I could build that community of practice we were hearing about with children. Could I build that community of practice with head teachers as well? And I put 21,000 head teachers together. And this is what they all said about being joined up.
Talking Heads has made an enormous difference to me as a head because it's given me the opportunity to talk to like-minded colleagues who face a similar set of problems, both locally and nationally, that I've faced.
Talking Heads is like meeting all your other head teacher colleagues in the coffee break at a conference and being able to debate when you choose, for as long as you choose, the issues that are important to you.
The difference it's made to me, being part of the Talking Heads project, is having a whole load of heads to speak to at the touch of a button, really.
They all say the same thing. They all talk about the power of the community of practice that was there. When we started it, I couldn't persuade ministers. They were nervous to go into the community and talk to 21,000 head teachers. They they'll all be angry because of our policies. But by the time we ended it, I had ministers queuing up to go in and talk to the head teachers about what the policy might be, because they knew there was so much internal expertise within that community. That's the power of what you've got here with your community. And that's why I'm excited by those online tools you're bringing to bear to give you the power to exchange and converse with each other. You see, we're not in a world where policy can lead this anymore. It's moving too quickly. Back in the 80s, you know, policy, you'd sit and reflect on policy at a national, federal, state level for a while, and then you'd publish a consultative document, and then maybe a 5-year plan. You implement a policy, stand back for 5 years to see how it worked. That's gone. You know, now, the world's moving so quickly. What we need is an army of ingenuity, trying, testing, swapping, exchanging, validating, building, measuring the impact of new ideas and exchanging them with each other. What you need from your policymakers is vision, is ambition. What you need coming out of the results of your election, above all else, you're going to want a candidate who says, we want the smartest kids in the world, we want the happiest children in the world, and we want them to be happy being smart forever. Because fundamentally, that's what you're up against in terms of global competition for learning. Not enough to get through school with a few certificates. Jeeps, you can go to a website and print off the certificates anytime you like anyway. You know, if you want an essay, whew, there they all are. You know, it's a passion for learning, and that's absolutely at the heart of all this. So I wanted next to just reflect on the fact that people are really trying a lot of things down at the grassroots. And I just wanted to step through a few ideas that schools are trying all around the world to push out the boat a bit in terms of what learning might look like. And they're trying all sorts of good things, really. Learning is changing rapidly. And look, here's up in East Kilbride, right up in the sort of top corner of Scotland, across a bit. This is East Kilbride. How many of you have played brain training on the little Nintendo DS? You know that? Oh, not so many. Yeah. Some not sure. You definitely haven't played. You know. So listen, it's worth $100. It's a great little game. It just tests you with your non-verbal reasoning, your pattern matching, your arithmetic. It's tough stuff to do. And what's happened in this school is the children all play it for 20 minutes before they start school. Everybody. All sorts of things have happened. Spectacularly, results have gone up dramatically. Have gone up not because the brain training thing works. Slightly alarming, actually. It comes back to you with a brain age, and tells you the smarter you are, the younger your brain is, which is you might want to reflect on. Or a different version comes back and gives you your brain in terms of the career you might have adopted. You have the brain of a real estate agent. Oh no. I'm going to be unemployed. Oh no. This doesn't seem fair on them, does it? They were greedy and incompetent. Well, nobody's bought them out, have they? Here's another school. This is little tiny school and we're going to come back to the Cayman Islands later on. Little tiny school, and there's the entire school population on the screen in front of you in the yellow shirts. And we connected up to another school, a school that I'm chairman of governors of in England, and the entire school population is on the screen there. 9 children in total. Do they learn from each other? Of course they do. Have they got things to exchange? Of course they have. Was it expensive? No, because the networking power is there already. The cameras in the computer, the bandwidth's in the ground, the protocols are built. You'll see it in this conference. You go into the coffee bar of an evening, you'll see half the conference saying goodnight to their children and hello to their beloved ones. We're in a networking world. And one thing is absolutely certain, that is the economies of scale that built big schools co-located are irrelevant now. You don't need geographical proximity to build excellence. That on its own drives a coach and horses through some of our assumptions about the size and scale of schools. Here's another one. This is, well, there are lots of these, but the one I'm excited by, I think, is the Australian School of Maths and Science in Adelaide, Ron Lake's extraordinary school, where from 11 years onwards, the children sit in on undergraduate classes for 4 hours a week. So for 4 hours a week, they're straight onto Flinders University, into the lecture rooms, and they're sitting there with the undergraduates. Do you think they're keeping up? Of course they are. Do you think they're challenged? Of course they are. Do you remember that moment when a teacher said to you, "You're not supposed to know this yet, but I'm going to tell you anyway"? Remember how exciting that was? This lot have really broken through the barriers, Learning's getting out of its boxes at an extraordinary pace. Here's another one. This is a school I've been working with, Bilston, up in Wolverhampton, in the heartlands of the British industrial Midlands, and they just shut their staff room. They've said, look, everybody that walks through this door is a learner. Why would we have special rooms for the old ones? Let's just... special chairs, maybe, but that's it's a bit softer, And so they've reopened their staff room as a chill-out space. And I tell you what, every time I talk to children and to teachers about what they want in their school designs, they always say, just a space to chill out, just a quiet space. So they've shut their staff rooms and reopened it as that. The staff have made the decision, and they're loving it. Here's another one. This is in Christchurch in New Zealand, where they thought, we just don't know what schools are going to look like in the future. So let's just build one for now. And they built a 5-year school in the heart of the shopping centre. In fact, it's on the 3rd floor of a department store. You can see the escalator coming up can you see that? See the escalator coming up in the middle there. Let's see, come back. You see the escalator coming up in the... Oh. It's like magic. A bit. The children go into the school. They're there for 5 years, no new children join. At the end of the 5 years, it goes. It goes back to selling hats and umbrellas or whatever. 50-year plan for a school? Why not 5? Why not 1? Why not 6 weeks? So you can see that everywhere people are challenging the basic assumptions about. Here's, gosh, look, this is Sherry Vert. I was just chatting to Sherry just last week, last Thursday, in Tasmania. Sherry's got the most extraordinary school, Reese High School. The most exciting thing about it was that this is the extreme version of Learner Voice, because the children burnt down the one that was there before, which is it's a clear measure of evaluation, What do you think of the school? Hang on, we're just lighting it, Sherry says if only they'd known a little more about meteorology, they would have burnt the whole school. They didn't light it on the windward side. So a couple of buildings survived. She says with pride that you could see the building burn from mainland Australia, which is Tasmania, remember, a little island, you know. But what they built afterwards, you know, as a result of the community all standing around the flames, they didn't stand in the car park and take a register. They stood around the flames and danced. You know, it was a much hated institution. What they built instead, quite extraordinary. Of course, built around those small-scale home bases, those principal learning spaces, that sense of scale that is so important. Why would you ever build a school where you walk around a corridor and you see a face and you just don't know who they are? All around the world, schools are building themselves into little units of learning, little home bases. Doesn't matter whether you're in Iceland, Australia, Europe, anywhere. You know, I'm building currently, I was trying to work it out on the plane, about 3.5 billion sterling, so it's, I don't know, it's $7 billion worth of schools around the world at the moment. I'm not building a corridor in hardly any of them. So that sense that you might have open spaces, because once you get people based in those comfortable communities, they stop moving. They don't have to. You don't ring a bell and say, you're doing biology here, ring a bell, now go over here and do technology. Hang on, we've got a crisis nationally because we've got a shortage of biotechnologists. This is a world of project-based learning. It's a world of mixed-age learning. This is a world of mutuality, collegiality, of family, of belonging, of usness. The most important word in the design of a new learning facility is usness. How do you feel you belong to it when you walk through the door? I'll tell you what, that isn't about uniformity, and that isn't about conformity. What use would you have in the 21st century for children who only conform? Practically unemployable. In the 1970s, you wanted children who conformed. They were going to work on the production lines and banging a wheel on the left-hand side of a car. Somebody was doing something on the other side they never knew. Now those mindless jobs are being done by robots. We don't need mindless children anymore. I would argue we never did. But now for sure, we need children who are ingenious, who can build better robots and can manage the outsourcing of work and can communicate and work with and learn from others all around the world. Building schools for communicative, ingenious, collaborative children who feel like they're belonging to something is a very different world from building those factory schools where a curriculum was delivered and wisdom was received, where you read, learned, and inwardly digested and moved on. Those cells and bells schools, as I'm sure most of you know, are confined to the last century. And what we're building in place are as exciting as Sherry's place in Tasmania. And here's another one. This is, I think we'll come and have a listen to the children from here, perhaps, or the teachers in a minute. This is a school in East London where they were simply worried about the quality. And they thought, well, why don't we get the children to sit in and watch the classes? So the children sit in and do lesson, see what they're not going so well, talk to the teachers about. Do the teachers feel pressured by all that? No, they don't. It's an honest dialogue between the two of them about how can we make learning in this place better. Well, I'll play you a little clip in a moment of that school. Here's a school in Dudley in England where they couldn't face the every time people got their head down and started working, the bell rang and they had to move. And they said, why don't we just do one subject per month, nothing else? And everybody was gathered in a room together with one single focus, which was the production at the end of the month. And a real ambition. You don't get children in a Christmas production saying, I hope we can do just as well as the children the year before. There's no criterion referencing in the piece. You're trying to make it the best one the world's ever seen. And when you walk into that space, there are children who are young, chasing the role model of the older children, reinforcing their leadership. You've got people doing the technology, doing the costume, doing the scenery painting, worrying about the choreography, managing, organizing, all in one chaotically exciting space. And I'll tell you what, if it's not going well, they come in early, stay over the weekend, do it because they are so engaged in it. Engagement is the secret weapon in all this. Every one of these schools, performance has gone through the roof because in every one of these schools, the children are engaged. And Liso's 2 years, Jeepers, the exams don't look so hard and the kids look pretty smart. Why don't we just do it early? If we can get engagement, and of course, they flew through their exams. If you did nothing but biology for a month, completely absorbed in it, the exams are walk in the park afterwards. So all these are schools just being brave, just trying things here not a million miles from where you are. Over nestling underneath Cuba is the Cayman Islands. And they are doing some extraordinary stuff we're learning there. Extraordinary in a multifaceted sort of way. They're not just building buildings. They're building buildings and thinking about the curriculum, professional development, preschool, higher education, the model of organization departmentally, just thinking about every dimension. And I'll tell you what, not a million miles away from you, you've got that opportunity to look at a really, really powerful example of how good this all might be. The people here in the audience from there, if you see anybody with Cayman Islands on their badges, rush up and hug them and ask them for wisdom. Here's Thailand, the TK Park in the middle of Bangkok, the family learning space. Talking to the Thai government, they said, look, we haven't got time to get the schools right. By the time we've got the schools right, all the economies around here that we're racing against, Korea and Singapore and Malaysia, they'll have beaten us. So they built family learning centers where they're bringing in, I've run workshops in there for grandchildren and grandparents. Heaps of fun, absolutely heaps of fun. And these are playful spaces. Look at the library, with a climbing frame, you sit up and get a book. And look, those are crash mats on the floor. There's relatively few fatalities so far. It's Thailand, Here we are over in Denmark, once you've bitten the bullet that you're not going to build a school where 25% of your spending is just to move children around on stairwells. And I'll tell you what, when you look at the incidences of trouble in schools, it's just physics, isn't it? You take a large volume of children, you pass them through a narrow space and you get heat and pressure. Of course the corridors are problematic. Of course the stairwells are full of grief. Of course every single stabbing in a London school has taken place in the corridors, the stairwells, or at the school gates in the last 10 years. And when you don't build those narrow restrictions, look, the lecture theatres can become the steps. It just becomes open, and people move less. The wonderful thing about moving around Heller up to school, by the way, is the lovely shuffling, because they all wear slippers in a very Danish sort of way. The sound of their feet shuffling around is just a joy. Here's a school in Yorkshire where they had a terrible problem with bullying. And they introduced the praise pod, where they simply say, if you do anything good at all, who knows what good means, you get given a little card. And you take the cards, primary school, you take the card to a little booth in the corner, and the booth has a video capture device in it, and you're interviewed by your friends. So you arrive there, 10 years old, you've done something good, there's a couple of others, and they say, so what did you do that was good? And you have to articulate your excellence, which is quite a tough thing, to be honest, rather than just going home and saying, I've got a pink slip. What does that mean? And every night, your articulation of your excellence captured on a DVD goes home with you, or went home with you. 2,200 DVDs sent home last year alone. Little tiny school. And this year, they're sending it straight to the phones. So as a parent, you get a little buzz in your pocket as your phone vibrates, and you whip it out, and there's your daughter talking about what she's done that's excellent in school that day before you even get home. Powerful, powerful stuff. It's killed bullying outright because it's made it cool to be excellent. Just like in that school up in East Kilbride, it's made being brainy excellent. The kids who are playing the Big Brain Academy in the staff room, they've still got one. The staff are desperately trying to keep ahead of the 8-year-olds and failing. Here's some of the extraordinary designs being built just around London. I was involved in that one at the bottom. We'll hear from the girls being taught in that one. Here's a classroom too, though. Equally viable, outdoor space, shade, wireless networking. It's a learning space. We're off. That outdoor space is so significant. Learning elsewhere, such a powerful part. Toilets. You know about toilets. But those extraordinary industrial scale toilets that were built all over the world in schools, where you walk down a corridor, you open a door, and you walk into a sort of bullying antechamber, with cubicles off. I mean, what is that for? Wise schools are getting rid of them, at least knocking out the third wall. But smart schools are putting, everywhere the children are learning, just putting in, individual toilets. And you know they're unisex, and you know they work for young and old, and the staff use them too, and you know the boys and girls argue about whether the seat should be left up or left down. You know, if they run out of paper, somebody will go and get some for the company. It's just like home. 75% of the children in Sweden surveyed the other day try and get through the school day without using the toilets. That means they don't drink water. They don't drink water in the afternoon. Their concentration's shot to ribbons. Little detailed design matters hugely in terms of the quality of the learning experience. Here's wonderful inflatable spaces. These are now a standard item on an IT company in Europe. It's a now standard item on their IT catalog. If you just want a bit of private space, you hit a button, inflate a bit of space around yourself, in you go. That one at the bottom is in Glasgow, by the way, whereas to the best of my knowledge, everybody in Glasgow carries a knife, I think, probably. Nearly everybody, you know. And yet, look, you know, 2 years on, they haven't had one popped. They're wonderful spaces. When you get inside, they're quiet, like a sepulchre. You know, there's something about the quiet humming of the inflator and the insulation of the inflated space that just gives you real privacy and intimacy. You know. So look, you know, all I'm saying is all around the world, people are doing extraordinary stuff with furniture, with design, with curriculum, with absolute. This is great furniture here. When the children want to gather together for a moment of focus with their teacher, they climb onto that little sort of like little Colosseum-like set of seats, and it works extraordinarily well. So they're all trying it, and you know what? I suppose in the end, what can we say? Oh, look, here's Yokohama, where they read that fascinating stuff about, you know, when children crawl, there's something about the link between their eye and the floor that maps onto language acquisition later on. You'll know this if you've got babies around you and they're bottom shuffling, because Western babies tend to bottom shuffle because we've all got lovely glossy floors and, you know, wood block and tiles, and so you can't get any traction for crawling. So you have to bottom shuffle, and that actually hurts your language acquisition. So if your parents just knock them over would be my good advice, really. So you can see how bad my spelling is. I've just seen about 9 typos in this slide, you know. But this one in Yokohama, this is the preschool children playing in the net above the primary school children down below. You don't want to think about that too hard, because that's not a waterproof membrane there. Really. It's not. But, you know, a quick summary then. You know, what do we know about all this? We know that 21st century school is going to have pervasive ICT. You know. Everything is going to work. Whatever the children walk through the door with will work, will have a role, will function. Very few or no corridors, multifaceted spaces, indoor, outdoor, learning elsewhere, ubiquitous connectivity, project-based work beginning to dominate above subject-based work, collaborative work everywhere. Those days when you'd turn up for an interview as a kid looking for a job, and they'd say, and you'd be sitting there on your own with a set of certificates you'd earned on your own, and the first question they ask you is, are you a good team player? You know, those days are gone, because you'll arrive with your evidence of collaboration intact and in front of you. Children helping to appoint staff. About 75% of schools in England use the children to appoint staff, as well as others. So they about 3/4 have a children's panel for interviewing staff, and significant number for picking architects too, you'll be pleased to hear. Early exam take-up, longer learning blocks, mixed age work, project-based collaboration, and the thing that characterizes all these 21st century schools, spectacular improvement in the performance. Not 5% and 10% and 2% and 4%, but 100% and 200%, doubling performance in 3 and 4 year periods. Just massive gains. So, how are we doing for time? Well, we're going to have some time for questions at the end, so I want to leave. So, just wanted to take a moment just to remind you how good the kids are that we're producing. And I brought along some undergraduate work here, which I just thought was nice. Just because sometimes you get lost in the thought that maybe all children are going to be doing with their learning and technology is connecting to each other and swapping notes and doing exams. But these are some of the, I'm a professor of new media environments at Bournemouth University and some other universities too, but these are some of the undergraduates. This is some of their work, and it's It's just playful, but of a fab quality. Let's just watch it for a moment.
Right, a bit more to the right. Yeah, cool.
The Leaning Tower of Pisa, if
A bit more to the right.
you haven't been there.
A bit more to the left. Yeah, cool. All right. Bit, yeah, cool. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What the hell's that?
Everything there is fake. The crowd scene was generated as all CGI, the whole thing. You just get a feeling. You just take your eyes off the ball sometimes, even just looking at schoolwork, and you just forget how good this all is and how good the students are. I go into Bournemouth. I get in there. I'm a bit of a workaholic. I get in there at 7 in the morning, and I'll tell you, there are students on campus at that time. I leave at 9:30 at night. There are students on campus at that time. They're having fun, and they ain't going to go home. They're not going to take a minute off in all this. And that's not just them. Here's a school I'm working with just outside Cambridge, where the school was worried that nobody knew what was going on, and the kids were bored with assembly. What was it the head said? Starting the day with a ritual act of humiliation didn't seem like a good idea, was her comment. Yeah, me too. So what they did was to set up a children's media group, and they capture all the good stuff that happens in the school during the school day. And, oh, it's gone. There we are. It's quite alarming seeing a picture of me. I will lose weight. But slowly, I suspect, And they capture what they're doing in the school day, and then they put it all up, as you can see, on YouTube, and they just park each week a summary of all the best things that have happened in the school. And they've got over half their parents now watching all the good things that happen in the school. Schools do such a bad job of celebrating what happens inside. When you walk around the perimeter of a school and you say to yourself, what's happening in here? You could be walking around a prison sometimes, couldn't you? Just no sense at all of the excellence that's happening inside. Celebrating that excellence may not be a place for windows and projection screens, but I'll tell you what, the kids are putting it all up on YouTube and other places and sharing it and swapping it in that way. The deputy head in this school, Castle Manor School in just outside Cambridge, when I went to start the project with them, he said to me, this is all well and good, but he said, I've got 181 days to go before I retire. So this is not for me. He was counting. 3.5 years later, he's still there. And I nag him about this and pull his leg about it every time I go in. And he said, if you think I'm missing a minute of this, all my life I've waited for something this good to come along. 21st century learning is electrifying. It's exciting. It's engaging. It's delightful. And it's a million miles away from where we were in the 1970s and 80s and 90s. So let's, we've got about 10 to 12 minutes of questions at the end. So you might want to just start focusing on what those are for a moment. I've got a couple more things I want to show you. First of all, I want you to hear from two girls who are in one of those new learning spaces. I run a project in London every year called Be Very Afraid, which is quite good fun. We bring children, undergraduates through to primary age, into one place, and we sit them down with the stars from our media industry and our senior policymakers and key influencers, about 200 invited people. And the children show off what it is that they're doing with new technology and new learning. And the event's called Be Very Afraid because the very first one we ran, when I said to the most senior policymaker there, what do you think? He said, frankly, I'm terrified. So it seemed like a good title for it. We're just about to launch this in Korea, built around the Korean, Australian, New Zealand film industry, and fingers crossed, watch this space. I hope it's going to launch in Los Angeles as well. So Be Very Afraid is getting to be quite a big global brand. But I just wanted to give you one little tiny bit of this, or perhaps two. These are the girls who were in that blobby space that you saw just going past very quickly. I'm just going to let them articulate the changes that have happened in their learning as a result of being in a learning space. Just before they speak, I'm only going to correct them on one thing. They describe the space as being a bigger space. It actually isn't. It's just got a lot less furniture in it. The furniture and seating is built into the walls, so there's a lot less clutter in the space. But I'll let them speak. They're certainly more articulate.
This is the Ingenium, and this is what our project is about. And it's basically a classroom. It's called Classroom of the Future. And it's in our school. It's like an ordinary classroom, but it's much bigger and it's much more spacious, and it's a lot different in some ways, but even though we still have ordinary everyday lessons inside it.
Basically, students were asked what kind of learning environment they would like to work in, and that's what they came up with. So you've got the wide open doors, you've got the colour, you've got all the space, and you don't get the teacher-student barrier anymore. It's kind of broken down and they work together, whereas in classrooms the teacher's telling you what to do and you're reading from a textbook. This is more you discover your ideas and you're learning in your own way, and students can adapt to it so well.
It's a better environment to learn in, and you're more open and confident, and you're learning from each other as well as the internet or books.
I mean, I couldn't say it any more strongly than they can. You know, it is changing the world. It's worth taking 30 seconds to show you the project they were engaged in. That was pretty brave as well, I think. So here's what they were doing.
The project we're working on in particular is the reenactment of Brighton Rock.
We chose to do this film because we thought we'd like to do something interesting using green screen technology, and we found that the actress looks quite a lot like one of our pupils.
We placed her in front of the green screen, acting out the scene, and then we edited her in using a program called Ultra 2.
And Dickie Attenborough, by the way, came along on the day, was amazed to find the film he was in being reshot, you know, with children putting themselves back into it. I mean, extraordinary, no limits really on what they want to do. We like that movie, but one of our kids should be in it. Let's just put her in, you know. Extraordinarily brave and ambitious stuff. It's perhaps worth taking a moment just to look at one other. I think I'm just going to play, this is from a long way back. Some of you will have seen it before, even from the website. But this was a bunch of primary school girls who were very worried about boys. And the thing about boys that was worrying them was their grammar. They were, well, disappointed, really. They try not to say boys, but they can't really help themselves. So I'm just going to let them speak. What they did was they built a rap, a noun rap. So it was a wrap around parts of speech, which I just thought I'd throw up, given that rather useful little conjunction clip that was showing earlier from one of the sponsors. So here they are.
At school, we have been doing a noun wrap. We started this because some children in our class didn't know what a noun was or an adjective was. So we decided we'd make up a little rap so then we could help remind it. And it's worked really successfully because boys are now running around in the playground singing the song, and whenever we're asked what is a noun, we're like, a noun is a living word.
And so on, you know. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's grammar or literacy or music or technology, or I sure as heck know it's useful. And what's interesting about it is that sense that they've got of mutuality. Helping people to help each other is fundamentally what this century is all about. And don't you see that in spades from the children that are part of this extraordinary century? I was talking to a group of children just the other day. I have an interesting project where we simply gave them little iPhones, you know the little things, they're cute as pie and doubtless more to follow. And we just gave them to them for a year, really, and said, just, you know, let us know what they're like, really. This was then the first time they came together. It was actually on my boat, funnily enough. They all sort of came to a day out on the boat. And at the end, when they all got together, look how suddenly executive they've all become, by the way. What did you think? Well, we've had a thought about all this, you know. Something you can see the responsibilities grown in them, but we had some real surprises from it. One surprise was that nobody under 13 ever searched in Google. They searched in YouTube. You know, YouTube was their search engine. When they want to find stuff, they want to see stuff. They don't want to listen. So why would we want to do that? And I'll tell you what, building schools for that visual world is very different from building them for a world of linear narrative and notation. When we said to them, what about email? He didn't seem to use the email on here very much. They said, well, no, we thought that was really for people in business. And one of them took me to one side and she said, you know, email's what your dad does, really. And yet, when we set them tasks, you know, one task was go off and find members of your family from around the globe. But they did it in social networking spaces. They used what was out there. They used just a whole portfolio of possibilities of communication tools. They just used what was handy, and they got there. So you can see that we're not in a world where we're going to design for them something that mirrors the world they're in already. But we're in a world where we just want to let them do it their way and give them our wisdom and our judgment and our skill as learning and design. In the school in Bilston in Wolverhampton, we were saying to the children, the first thing, you know, people around here don't think very much of you. So we gave them the hoardings all around the town. And we said, you advertise how good you are, print up the posters and stick them around the town. So as the school was being built, what you saw all around the town were posters advertising the children, saying, hey, this is what we're good at. And do you know, it changed the whole, and changed the whole place over. You know, when you go to visit a school that you don't know very well, you see children coming around the corner, and it can be quite intimidating, a bunch of 14-year-olds. When you know them, you know, there's a scientist, there's an engineer, and you think, oh, you know. What happened here was the children became known for their excellence all around the community. So for sure, getting that right is a really significant design task for us in terms of all this. I want to pop back to the Cayman Islands, and I'm just going to look at a tiny bit of it, because what was interesting there was what they wanted their children to be. They wanted their children to be these four things. They wanted their children to be critical thinkers, of course, to be problem solvers, of course, to be ICT competent, and to be global citizens. That's a really nice checklist. Now, I've seen countries that have got, you know, documents this long, this thick, you know, describing all the potential outputs. That's a pretty decent set, isn't it? I'm not sure I'd want to vary on that. And look what they wanted the teachers to be. Adaptable. Able to make decisions, confident decision makers. You're only a confident decision maker because you've been given decisions to make. This isn't about, I used to sit on a committee with a person who was in charge of measuring quality in British schools. And if anybody mentioned the phrase reflective practice, he would, in anger, leave the room. Extraordinary. The thought that teachers might, you know, be inspired to think for themselves was just an anathema to him. But now, you know, I can't imagine a world other than we could not make progress other than by teachers reflecting on and making judgments. And crucially, it's our teachers we want to be lifelong learners. Teachers are going to be in this till, well, nobody's going to retire, are they? Look, you know, the financial world's just gone to hell in a handcart. So there goes your pension. So you're going to be, you're all going to be working at 110, teachers at 140, I think, probably. The only good news in this is by the time you get to be 90, you'll still be middle-aged because you're going to live to 180, possibly in a jar, but still, you know. Here was a large school in the middle of the Cayman Islands that we thought would be sensible to experiment with small scale. And what's exciting here are the names that the school communities thought about for themselves. I mean, as they, in very rapid turn, as the school was subdivided into little schools, not schools within schools, these are proper independent little schools, just separated by a fence and increasingly by an identity. But the names they picked: New Horizons, Leading Edge, Heritage, Embracing the Past, Shaping the Future, Pace. And these are great names for schools. How many of you went to school in a place that was named after a dead person, just in passing? Is that an interesting test? Ah, look at that. inspirational, wasn't it? That's can't imagine anything but skipping your step more. I'm off to the grave again, you know. What did he die of, by the way? I don't know. Too much learning. Not very far down the line. Was that, Gareth, was that 18 months down the line, wasn't it? I think it was 18 months down the line. Grades were up already significantly. You know, and when you talk to the children about why they're up, they said in all honesty, you know, we can't get away with so much. You know, everybody here knows who we are, what we're doing, what we should be doing, what we're not doing. We know each other. We're not wasting time with social tensions. It was a more intimate, more collegiate community sort of place, you know, which is not magical, this, but, you know, that key sense that's really strong there is, you know, everything has to be moving forward in parallel. This is not a serial world where you fix the schools, then look at the curriculum, then look at the timetable, then look at recruitment. Everything has to move forward gently, you know, little shuffly steps at a time. But if the people moving forward aren't talking together, then those corridors that they're building will start to move apart, and you'll all end up in different places. So this is about communication, but it's easy to be about communication because we've got great communication technologies right here, right in front of us right now. So, look, we're in a pretty exciting world here. Where shall I go to take us to questions? I think I'm going to take us to two things, really. First, I'm just going to reflect on this. I'm challenged by the UK government to do horizon scanning for them. And one of the things that they say to me is, Stephen, what are the things that are going to be coming in the future we haven't yet anticipated? We've looked at, we've looked at new technologies, we've looked at cognitive enhancement. You know, can we make brighter children chemically, genetically? Yes, we can, actually. Slightly alarming, just run the implications of that past. I mean, one of the jokes in the industry, by the way, is that if you can survive for another 20 years, you probably are going to live to 120. But by the time you get to 120, the children will be so smart they'll keep you as a pet, which is, you know. Not quite the future you were hoping for, you know. You can't afford a house anymore, but you've got a kennel, you know, it's not all bad, you know. So I hold these meetings actually in Tower Bridge. That's the office on the North Tower of Tower Bridge. And that's my boat, so I tie the boat up here and just sort of walk along the back. But you know what's extraordinary about these meetings are the ambition. We bring people together from all around the world, of all different disciplines. The one thing they've got, the one thing they share, is an ambition that their children might have a better learning future than they ever had. And that's a big change. Because you go back 10 years even, and people dreamt of learning. They'd say, I just want my children to have a learning experience like I had. Now I think there's almost nobody left in the world who wants that. They want a learning experience that's better, more engaging, more delightful, more seductive, more stretching, more ambitious, more collaborative, more global. And that's a real seed change. And it puts us in an extraordinarily competitive world. So I was reflecting on that competition in this way. If the front runners in making movies are China, India, the USA, not many others anymore, not Italy, not France, barely England, maybe New Zealand, you know. There aren't very many of them, are there? And if the front runners in making cars are, well, Germany, Korea, maybe the USA hanging on in there, you know, India perhaps, then who are the front runners going to be in learning? Who are the 5 or 6 countries worldwide that are going to lead in learning? I think they probably won't be countries. I think there'll be small regions. And when I look around and say, who's got that agility? Who's got the ambition? Who's got the collegiality? Who's got the mutuality? Who's got the opportunity? Then it turns out to be small regions, small nations, small communities. Strength of what you've got here is a conduit to join those communities and those regions, indeed those nations together. And those nations tend to be, those communities tend to be socially confident. They're happy with being who they are. They listen to their children above all else. They listen to their children. Absolutely listen to their children. Having the learner voice plugged into this is not enough. You've got to listen to it and act on it and respond to it. And crucially, perhaps, you know, they've got an ambition for themselves as a community, as a nation, as a region. And it turns out that The key words in all this are agility, are mutuality, are ambition. The parents and the community have to be bought into this. This is everybody together. The focus is on the future, not on can we keep those legacy systems going. Inexhaustible officers, inspirational ministers, good mix of young and old teachers. Some of the best teachers I've ever seen in my life in the system right now. Some of the wisest souls I've ever had the privilege to work with in the system right now. One lot just starting, one lot just leaving. And they're listening to the learner voice as well. And look, this really matters, all this, because all around the world, people aren't just busy researching what their learning lives might be like. Can you just see on the shirts of these kids? They've got the word researcher on their shirt. You know, they're out researching right now, today, at this moment, how good their learning might be. And it doesn't matter where you are, that's Darfur. Kids are picking up the tools of learning and seeing it as their way forward. Now, this actually matters for us because, you know, without over-egging it, what your great-grandparents did, what the previous generations did with medicine was transformative. It made a huge difference to the world. But I'll tell you what we can do with learning, with the installations that you build, with the learning systems that you build, will surpass even that. We've got a chance to inoculate children against poverty through learning. I'm working with some of the most desperate children in the most desperate circumstances. And they're leaping forward in a spectacular way. We've got a chance, I believe, to insulate nations from war just by getting them to work together with each other. You know, I absolutely believe that this is what we do. It's what our contribution is, our generation. Everybody from Hannah's 10, I don't know who the oldest of you in this room, but that generation of us all here together. This is what we do. This is the bit we put back in. This is the difference we make. And I'll tell you what, building the spaces where that learning might happen is the most challenging, the most exciting, the most fabulous opportunity you will ever see in your professional lives. And it's here right now. So I'm going to go to some questions, and then I'm going to show you one little tiny clip right at the end, and then it's probably coffee or something like that. Now, anybody ask a question? I don't know how this is going to work, but you put your hand up. If you ask, I have 3 DVDs. I'm not going to throw them because I'll kill somebody and you'll sue. You know, with Europe, I just chuck them out there and we get people with one in the eye be fine. You know. So who would like to ask anything at all? And there's one right there, and there's a microphone just coming to you. If you say who you are before you speak, yeah.
I'm Guy Overman from the Washington CEFPI chapter. I was curious as to whether there's any danger in connectivity to making our world culturally homogenous, having our schools become McDonald's franchises.
It's a good question, but I'm confident the opposite is true. I think that one-size-fits-all model, that bland old model, but really did characterize those factory schools we built in the 90s. And that sense that one-size-fits-all, I think, is going and is gone. The power of personalization to inspire children to work in different ways, I think, is very, very strong. And, you know, it's interesting. Some of the schools that 10 years ago we were worried that they had such cultural diversity. The school my daughter teaches in London, 83 different nationalities in that school. And we thought, jeeps, however that's going to work. And you suddenly realize that what they're doing is prototyping global learning. Learning is going global so fast at the moment. Look, that's a silly example, but this is Genogly College in Nottingham in England, just a regular everyday school. But they looked at their curriculum and they said, this doesn't really fit our children. It doesn't really fit our ambition. It doesn't really fit our cultural and geographical context. So they looked around the world, and in fact, Genogly College are now studying the Queensland curriculum and all the way to Australia for a curriculum, and they're now doing that. So I think where we are is a world where schools can choose what they want to do, instead of us imposing it on them. And in that choice, you know, they're away from fast food and they're back to gourmet learning. You know, and indeed the task here, I think, is to reach out for the ingredients that have been tested effectively all around the world and bring them together to build a local recipe. I don't think you've got to gamble with the ingredients, but you have got to be creative with a local recipe. That is a very different, wouldn't it be a great world if McDonald's were creative with their recipes? That would be a whole other place, wouldn't it? You know? Another question, and I'm going to go to one there. There's yep, absolutely spot on. as you ask these questions, I shall throw DVDs onto the middle of the stage. Well, we've got a DVD monitor. Excellent. There we. If I give them all to you, you can give them out as they come. Yeah, yeah, fire away.
And Anne Gorry from South Australia. I was wondering about parents. You've mentioned that children are very responsive to this, teachers, headmasters. What about parents? What's their reaction to a new model of schooling?
It's a very strong reaction because I don't honestly know very many parents who are all that satisfied with what happens. The children come home, you say, what did you do at school? There's stuff, you know, there's no sense of inspiration. What happens in these 21st century institutions is that the children can't wait to show the parents what they're doing. But also, it is a world of mutuality. Isn't it odd that the school sends a report home about the children's progress, but the parents don't send a report back about, you know, the children are carers, they're in sports groups, they're doing cool things with their nephews and nieces. None of that gets fed back to the school. And we built this model of one-way delivery. And I mean, what's happened is, you know, the jury's out there, that's gone. You know, we're into a two-way conduit, a two-way pipe. Parents, and the only thing is, it's very hard to say to parents, look, what we've been doing all along is pretty high risk. You know, there isn't any evidence that it works. I mean, think about those factories that you had in Melbourne, in Detroit here, in the 1970s and 80s, where the jobs were so disaggregated that they were characterized with dissatisfaction and alienation and anomie. You had people rioting at the gates. You had vandalism. They were dreadful, dreadful, dreadful places. It turns out that when we soften schools and make them more places of teamwork and of project-based work and engagement, all that tension starts to disappear. And it becomes another world. And I'll tell you what, all the parents, without exception, that see children coming home saying, I can't wait to tell you what I've been doing. I can't wait to show you, are you coming to my exhibition? That makes a difference. In Bournemouth University, for example, we're talking about moving the whole graduation over to an exhibition-based graduation process. Instead of just writing, you know, papers and doing a dissertation, we're building a massive exhibition all around the country for parents to come to and be part of. So, you know, that level of reaching out and embracing them is absolutely key. They're part of this. They're not just, you know, and this is a long answer, but it's worth it. Look, oh, can I have the slide back up? There we go. This is a project I'm doing with 1,000 travelers. I mean, really interesting. These are, this is the Gypsy Council of Europe. So these are travelers from all over Europe. It's 1,000 people on a site, and there's a guy I'm working with. That's a schoolroom we built there. That's my boat van there when I carry the sales round in. I always go in my van because it gives me credibility. What we're doing there is taking 1,000 people and picking them up by their bootstraps and building literacy and numeracy and learning. And the model, I mean, there's 253 children of school age with 0 attendance. There's 116 teenage mothers. But when I started sitting down and talking to people, and the deal, I'm giving them the deal that, you know, you're going to get literacy out of it. You've got to put something back in. I was talking to an 83-year-old mother in a fabulous caravan with all cut glass and just beautiful, beautiful stuff, a matriarch, you know, of generations and generations of children. And she said to me, you know, I'm in my 80s, but I always wanted to read. Do you think it's too late for me? Of course it isn't. You know, but the question I gave her back was, of course it's not, but what are you going to put back in? What are you going to teach people yourself? So here absolutely is a settlement outside of the law. You know, the government is trying to bulldoze the settlement at the moment because it's illegal. Outside of the law, but where the whole settlement picking themselves up by the bootstraps and moving forward. So parents aren't just on the periphery of this, absolutely at the heart of it, absolutely at the heart. So a long answer. Let's go over to, well, yeah, come to the back, good plan. I can't see at the back, so.
Thank you. Can you tell me about trends that you're seeing with business communities being involved globally with schools, not including foundations?
Yeah, I mean, the fabulous thing about distance suddenly is that it doesn't matter. You know, you are literally a mouse click away. You go back to Australia and look at the, you know, the schools they had the kids right across the outback, or look at the correspondence schools in New Zealand and Finland, where it was really hard to create authentic lessons at a distance. Now, suddenly, it works extraordinarily well. I had a group of children, in fact, the children you saw earlier with the microphones were part of it. I had a group of children in Kent, which is sort of on the east side of England, and they were talking to other children all around the world about their learning experiences. We just set them up in a hall like this, big Skype screen up on the background. The children came up to microphones and they chatted to children all around the world and just had conversations. And you know, it was as though they were in the room together. The girls in Tasmania were in, it was the middle of the night for them, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. They were all in windset pajamas and Ugg boots, you know, you can imagine. It was cold. And the boys in Kent were flirting unreservedly with them, you know. It's 18,000 miles away, what's the point? But so suddenly we're in a joined up world, absolutely a joined up world. Geographical proximity stopped mattering. And what matters is community and usness. And you can build usness at a distance, you absolutely can. It's a design task. One more question down there, I think.
Here in California, we build large schools. And have you had any experience with breaking down the paradigms that get built up and entrenched within the academic community as well as sort of the building community?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with large schools per se. That's the problem, is the large communities within them. So you can have small communities within large schools, just as you could have a shopping mall with lots of little stores. They don't all have to necessarily be sort of hyper stores. You can have the intimacy of a small delicatessen or a patisserie, so you can have small communities within those large schools. One of the big problems is that in some cases, we've defined the teacher's role and their seniority by the number of rooms they're in charge in. I'm a head of history, I have 5 rooms. I'm a head of science, I have 11 science labs. And one of the things, I mean, as I'm sure many of you know, one of the hardest things when you're trying to build a new school design is somebody will appear, you know, with a big sheet of paper and they'll say, I've got the timetable for the school, and I just want to make sure that Tuesday afternoon is going to fit somewhere on the new design. And of course, Tuesday afternoon was the product of the old school. You know, the only thing that determined how many science lessons you had and how many spaces you had was the old design. So I always think if the old timetable will fit in the new school, maybe we shouldn't have built the new school at all. But what happens? Do you remember the walking pavement thing we were looking at earlier? What happens to the people that don't reach out and embrace this change that's just coming at you in every direction? Just, you know, relax and go with it. People who don't embrace it find it's exhausting. You'll find in schools at the moment, particularly those large schools, they're so desperate to keep up that they've built quality control that is so tough. There's so much bureaucracy. Some of our best teachers at 4 or 5 years into their careers. The schools where they've stepped back a bit and allowed the children to be much more in charge of their own learning, much more articulate about their learning. The teacher's role goes back to being that of a learning professional, being on call, being ready to be called for those tough questions that you know are going to come, you know, and standing back waiting for a group of inspired children to come to you with tough questions. Somebody said to me in a public meeting, a teacher, he said, look, my kids won't calculate stuff until I've got them turned up and sat down on time. And then we all laughed, you know, because there's, of course, you know, if you're doing all those rigid things, the children won't be engaged, and that is a really hard task. So those big schools are pretty unpleasant places to be 9 times out of 10. And what happens very quickly is that people say, we're in a new sort of place, and then they move on. But you do have to change little things, like like that idea about professionalism depending on the number of rooms.
It's a little bit on the parent and community buy-in. I was just curious, in your travels and the different sites that you visited, was there a method or a way that worked better in some areas as opposed to others?
Absolutely. The thing that makes the difference is seeing the quality of the children. Here's a child. Let me just give you an example, really. Here's young Luke. And well, I'll let him just say a couple of words about who he is.
I'm from Not School, and I focus a lot on 3D.
In my charity, the Inclusion Trust, and he's been excluded from school for stabbing. He's had 2 stabbing incidents, not been stabbed, doing the stabbing. So he's got a pretty bad record. We took him out, we connect him up to experts all around the country, do it for the same price as a regular school. It's a different sort of learning model. And here he is at 16, 18 months after this sort of started to come out. And I'm just going to show you his show reel.
There's 200,000 strands, Took around 2 hours to render, and it was basically done with just a hair plug-in with Cinema 4D, and that's essentially just a sphere with the hair on it, and then I just moved it around. This was done with cloth and cloth colliding objects. The floor has...
Look, you can see it for yourself, you know. Now, there's not a parent in the country that when they see their son going from excluded from school to stabbing to, during this exhibition, he was offered 3 jobs, and in every case he said, I'm not going to take the jobs, I'm going to go to university, that's where I'm going to go. There's not a parent in the country other than embraces this and goes for it. It is all about engagement when all's said and done, fundamentally all about engagement. Look, we're in trouble with time here, aren't we? How are we doing? I think we probably ought to pause, because we'll have one more. I'd talk for a fortnight, me, that'd be one more, and it's going to be this gentleman right over here in the wings. Just, you'll have to wait for the microphone because that's how it is.
You gave us an example about parents. Can you give us an example of what converts teachers who are opposed to change?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, what's fascinating about this is that teachers don't want to be in a box. They don't want to be constrained. They don't want to be limited. They don't want to be bureaucrats. They've all come into this to see children's eyes light up with excitement. They've all come into this to see children making progress. There's a passion about this. I'll tell you what, when you see kids like young Luke there, you know, there's a tear in your eye when you see that. There genuinely is. That's the thing that motivates them, absolutely above all else. It's the progress they make. And for me, it's a little bit more than that too. I think this chance we've got to change the world, you know, a lot of people have talked about that in the past, but suddenly the ball has landed right at our feet, and it's a ball that's been made of changing expectations in the 21st century. It's a ball that's been made of the extraordinary technology that we've got in our hands and in our pockets and on our desktops. It's a ball that's been made of this interconnected global world, which on the one hand maybe threatens our national boundaries, but on the other hand reinforces the power of local communities. It's a world that I think people have recognized from 200 years ago rather than from 50 years ago. I think that opportunity has come to us in a very special way. I'll tell you, I've never seen a teacher who didn't want to reach out for the possibility of changing that world through learning, above all else. And you know, I was in a classroom, silly little example to finish with. I was in a classroom 9 months ago, a little wooden hut practically falling down. I walked through the doors, a newly qualified teacher sitting in there. The room is in darkness. There's a video running on the wall from a projector of Pathé News footage of, it was German stormtroopers marching through the streets of Berlin. The desks are all pushed into the corner. The teacher's walking around on the desktops with a torch, and she's shining it into the cracks between the desks. The children are sitting underneath the desk, and they're reading the Diary of Anne Frank. And I'll tell you what, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. And you know what the homework was? The homework was, hey, if Anne Frank had had a mobile phone, what kind of stuff might she have texted to her friends? You know, that's the excitement. That's the galvanizing engagement that's on the table in front of us. That's the kind of thing that'll change the world, and it'll change it through the designs and the work that you do, because you're building the infrastructure that makes all that dream a reality. So let's have a conversation over the next 3 days about how good that might be. But whatever else you do, don't drop your ambition. Your kids, your communities can be unrecognizably good compared to the past and amongst the best in the world as we walk into the future. That'll only happen through your work. Thank you very much.
Professor Stephen Heppell. Up it. Up it.
Great. Oh. Thank you very much. Gosh, thank you. Thank you.
Wow. I thought we stretched our vision last year. I have no idea, Sue. Looks to me like we have a whole new stretch. And you know, when Stephen was talking, and he talked about some things that we are theming this conference about, listening to the learners. And you're going to have an opportunity after the break to listen to the learners. You have these little dots, and I'm going to tell you about those in just a second. But you're going to have an opportunity. The high-tech high kids are just waiting to get you next door in their rooms and talk to you. But I first want to thank for the lunch. Deb Moore is here from School Planning and Management and College Planning and Management, who are sponsoring the lunch. They have been such a great sponsor of this organization over the years that we want to please give a hand to Deb Moore and her company for all they do for us. I don't know where she is, but she's here, hiding here somewhere, I know that. Thank you, Deb. A few housekeeping items. The business meeting, which I know you are all just absolutely can't wait to do, will be held tomorrow morning at 7:30 in the Delmar room, and the half a dozen of you come will really like to see you. And then the regional meetings will be at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon, and the instructions for that will be in the session I'm reading now. Please, instructions for opening session 1. Please look at your name badge and take note and look at the colored dot. Each colored dot represents a room assignment that we'd like you to attend, and all the rooms are accessed outside of the ballroom, with the exception of the pink group, which can be reached via the ballroom. Okay. Room assignments are: green dots will assemble in Elizabeth A, orange dots will assemble in Elizabeth F, yellow dots will be in Elizabeth B, and you pink dots, you're going to assemble in Elizabeth G through the ballroom entrance. So, it has been wonderful. Again, Stephen, always when I hear you, I'm just, it's wonderful. Let's take a break. Thanks, you guys, very much.